Okay, thank you for introduction. And so I would like to say good morning to everybody. And it's my pleasure to be here as guest speaker for the joint event today. And I'm also very glad that the collaboration between our institutes has been carried out continuously for all these years. And on behalf of the Fashion Design Department of Rangsit University, I would like to, we really appreciate that. So I'm going to start the lecture, and I'm going to start sharing the screen of what I'm going to talk about today. Okay, so again, I would like to first introduce myself that I'm Seksarit Thanaprasitikul. I'm a lecturer from the Fashion Design Department, Rangsit University. And my session today entitles Design Approach for Sustainable Fashion. And it will cover the following topics. First, we're going to have a look at waste in fashion. So it will involve how fashion industry causes waste and damages. And then we're going to have a look at sustainability in fashion. So it will explain how what sustainability really means in the fashion context. And then we're going to have a look at sustainable design strategies, which will highlight the sustainable strategies, how the sustainability can be implemented in design practice. So first, let's have a look at the waste in fashion. So fashion industry is actually one of the most wasteful industries in the world. And the fashion industry produces more clothes than what we really need. And according to different studies, it shows that in 2019, around 80 to 150 billion garments are produced globally. So the number is really massive. And in the past 10 years, the amount of fashion collection has increased significantly. So fashion brands increased designs from 2 collections a year in 2000 to 5 collections a year in 2011. Such as an addition of resort collection or pre-fall collection, and not to mention those brands with haute couture collection and diffusion lines and special collaboration capsule collection. And for fast fashion brands, they offer even more. For example, Zara offers like 24 collections a year, which means that the new collection will be available every 2 weeks. And why H&M offers like 12 to 16 collections a year. So you can imagine how many clothes they have really produced. And according to the large amount of garment being produced each year, so global fiber production has also increased. It reaches at an all-time high of 111 million metric tons in 2019, according to the Fiber and Materials Market Report. But sadly, 47% of all fiber becomes waste throughout different stages of production. And among those waste, 15% of fabric used in garment production is cut, discarded, and wasted. However, in response to the problems I mentioned earlier, the fashion industry starts to take action to deal with the problems. So we can see that many brands start to have more awareness of environmental impact and promote sustainability in fashion. So we can see that fashion starts to have more significant role, sustainability starts to have more significant role in fashion design. So therefore, let's have a look at the sustainability in fashion, what it really means. And according to the United Nations, the UN describes sustainability as development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations that meet their own needs. And based on that definition, sustainable fashion refers to a more environmentally friendly approach to all stages from designing, producing, and consuming clothes. And it also involves extending the life of clothes that we've already had. It includes the way that we reuse, recycle, and upcycle the garments that we have. And in order to promote the sustainability in fashion, we will have a look how we can achieve sustainable fashion in the context of design. And according to the CFDA Guide to Sustainable Strategies, it suggests that good design is sustainable. So sustainability must start with the designer. And it can start with this first question when you start designing. How is your design making the world better or solving problems? So apart from designing beautiful clothes for customers, positive impacts relating to sustainability should also be taken into consideration when you design. And among sustainable design strategies proposed by CFDA, today's session will focus on these 4 topics. Substitute for better, reduce materials and waste, design for customization and multi-use, and design closed-loop systems. So we're going to have a look at each strategy one by one, and each strategy will be illustrated by designer's example in order to demonstrate how these sustainable strategies can be implemented into design practice. So first, let's start with the substitute for better. So it involves a selection of materials that are energy efficient and sustainable. So in this area, Stella McCartney is very well known for choosing or using sustainable materials. For example, the brands implemented the use of regenerated cashmere instead of pure cashmere, which has less harmful effect on the environment. And in addition to that, the brand opts for vegetarian leather, which has similar features to animal leather, but cruelty-free and reduces negative environment impacts. And the next strategy is reduce materials and waste. So it focuses on using less and moving towards zero waste methods. And in fact, if we really look back to the fashion history, the idea of zero waste has been initiated for a long time. For example, this is a well-known one seam coat by Cristobal Balenciaga in the past. And in this design, seams are reduced to just one single horizontal seam at the back, continuing from one sleeve to the other. And therefore, the side seam is eliminated, which reduces the cut and waste. So actually, although this is not an absolute zero waste pattern, but the fabric scraps and leftover are very minimal. The other designer that is also regarded as a pioneer for zero waste method is Yoli Tang. Her zero waste philosophy means no scraps of fabric go wasted. So the designer focuses on maximizing the use of fabric, and so even sometimes including the salvage of the fabric. Like, for example, in this design, this is the hooded raincoat, and that is constructed with zero waste pattern. So the fabric around the body panel becomes the pattern parts of the hood, and therefore there are no leftover fabrics here. And as for David Telfer, this is also a designer who focuses on zero waste pattern. And so he uses the sustainable cutting techniques such as the zero waste pattern that creates one piece construction like in this picture. So the whole piece of fabric is used with no leftover fabrics. And the other method from this designer includes a minimal seam construction. So the pattern panels are joined together with an aim to eliminate the cutting seam. And as a result, the less seam, the less waste. And also the other designer who also focuses on zero waste pattern, but unlike the previous designer, so for Timor Resonant, the pattern layout are completely redesigned to fit in a piece of fabric without any waste. So unlike the way we put the pattern on the fabric, so all the pattern has been redesigned in order to make sure that there will be no waste or leftover fabrics. And as for the other designer, Holly Merkeland, the designer experimented with a different method. So unlike the previous approaches done by other designers, so she believes that one piece of fabric should not be limited to just one kind of garment. So she combines multiple garments into one pattern. And it creates a kind of a variety of items and shapes without any waste. And as a result, it becomes like a jigsaw puzzle garment. The other example is the Mobius dress by Jamie Jin Yoon. So this dress is constructed from just a single strip that is cut in between to create one continuous loop. And that single cutting line can be fastened by a zipper, which allows flexible openings for the wearer to put on in multiple ways. And unlike conventional clothing, so this Mobius dress highlights a very radical design created from just a single piece of fabric with minimal cut and no waste. And the next strategy is designed for customization and multi-use. So this strategy features design that can be adjusted by the wearer for different sizes and multiple functions. And one of the most innovative example is the work of Isemiyake, a piece of cloth. So APOC stands for a piece of cloth. And this collection was launched in 1997. And it was a collaboration between Isemiyake and Dai Fujiwara. And the garments were produced in rolls of knit fabric that can be cut by the wearer to determine the specification they prefer. So as you can see in the picture, so the garment can be cut to adjust the length and the width according to the wearer preference. And in addition to that, the fabric is woven into a knit pattern with outlines that suggest a variety of clothing items, such as dresses, shirts, socks, and gloves, and hats. So the wearer can cut along the seam without destroying the fabric. And it results a set of monochromatic ensemble that leaves no waste. So as you can see in this picture, a roll of knit fabric can be cut into various clothing items. And the next strategy is designed closed loop systems. So it involves the reuse and recycling of product you have created. And it means that the garments you created should be taken back and reused or recycled. And one example is the designer Inly Sanchez, who creates this earth sweater. So this sweater is, it can be brought down into just a single thread for making a new one. And even fast fashion brand like H&M starts to initiate this strategy. So the brand aims to encourage the customer to recycle by providing a recycle bins at the store. So customers can donate unwanted clothes to this recycle bin, and those clothes will be recycled into textile fibers and applied to new materials for the new production. And another great example is the G2G system by Hong Kong Research Institute of Textile and Apparel. So the system is the recycle system that recycles post-consumer garments to become a new piece of garments. And the recycle process includes several steps, starting from cleaning, cutting fabric into small pieces, carding, spinning, and knitting. And what's great about this system is that it is accessible for customers. It is open as a pop-up store that customer can enter and see all processes. So I'm going to show you a short video that demonstrates how this system works.
The garment-to-garment recycling system is a mini production line used to process post-consumer garments into sanitized recycled garments. The system uses no water, no dyeing is needed. It involves 8 steps that are carried out in a 40-foot container. First, used garments are sanitized in an ozone chamber to remove microorganisms on the clothes. The used garments are then shredded into their constituent yarns and fiber particles in a fiber opening machine. Next, the shredded material is divided into clumps of fiber, and impurities attached to the clumps are removed in a cleaning machine. The clumps are then carded and aligned in the same orientation, and so become fiber web. The next step involves the fiber web being formed into slivers, and a number of slivers being drawn together to form straightened units with improved evenness. A number of these drawn slivers are fed into a high-speed rotor and spun into single yarn. 2 single yarns are then combined, and this double yarn is fed into a twister machine, which converts the yarn into ply yarn to enhance strength and balance torque. Finally, either new garments are made using a whole garment knitting machine, or knitted fabrics are produced by a flatbed knitting machine. The system design is compact and easily installed. The entire process takes place in a standard 40-foot container. With its anti-vibration, noise and dust-controlled design, the production line minimizes noise and disruption to nearby businesses, and so is configured for operational compatibility within community spaces, such as shopping malls. The process is waterless, which adds significantly to the system's environmentally friendly properties. These features mean that the system blueprint can be readily adopted by interested parties globally, such as fashion brands or retailers. The first garment-to-garment recycling system was set up in Hong Kong in 2018 and demonstrates how post-consumer garments can be recycled into clean and wearable clothes. Members of the community can view the entire process and are thus able to experience and be inspired by a novel recycling process.
So, considering all strategies I explained earlier, including substitute for better, reduce materials and waste, design for customization and multi-use, and design closed-loop systems, it shows that when the sustainability is implemented in design practice, it concerns 3 major areas, including materials, design, and technology. And in summary, sustainable fashion can be achieved by a good selection of sustainable materials, a design that maximizes the use of materials, and a reinforcement of recycled technology that regenerate the materials. And hopefully, the design strategies I showed today will more or less give you a picture how we can improve the fashion industry in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Seksarit, for your presentation. And now we will move into our second speaker here. We have Ms. Rahayu Budi, who will share about localism as sustainability approach in fashion. Before, I want to read a brief about Ms. Ayu. Ms. Ayu is a lecturer of Fashion Product Design and Business, Universitas Ciputra. She is also Commissioner of PSP, Jaya Aguna, which is an Indonesian small company that specializes in footwear development and manufacturing. She's also a researcher and a consultant in product research and development subsector, craft, and fashion. And then currently, she gives a lot of training for SMA, small medium enterprise, in fashion and craft in several areas in Indonesia, such as Bandung, Jember, and also Pasuruan. The newest one is she became a business mentor for local small business of fashion and craft in Lombok under Swiss contract, Swiss Foundation. And now we would like to welcome Ms. Ayu to share with us. Please, Ms. Ayu, time is yours.
Thank you very much, Ms. Olivia. Okay. Good morning, everyone. Wait, I will try to share my presentation first. Okay. Can everyone see my presentation?
Yes, Miss.
Yes, okay, thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm Ayu, a lecturer of Fashion Product Design and Business, Universitas Ciputra. As the host of this joint lecture, and on behalf of Universitas Ciputra, Surabaya, I would also like to say welcome to students from Rangsit University, Thailand, and the lecturer as well. We have been there 3 times, actually, I think, but because of this pandemic, we only can gather virtually like this. But thanks to the technology, the event like this is possible to happen without effort to fly the hours to Bangkok, even though I would love to. I really love the food. The Bangkok food is amazing. And this joint lecture actually is part of Fashion Product Design Universitas Ciputra and Rangsit collaboration. I would like to say thank you very much for Seksarit, who always been very helpful and welcome all this time. Thank you for the interesting presentation. How us as a fashion designer able to contribute to a better future of fashion industry using design approach. We know Rangsit has a remarkable design style and experiment, and us in Universitas Ciputra is more like market-oriented design. So I hope we can learn from each other from some of different perspectives to collaborate and to make a better generation for fashion industry. And also I would like to say hi to Lisa from your university for the time to share her knowledge and experience with us, and welcome to external participants as well. I hope everyone can get a meaningful insight from this event. And the topic I'm going to share right now is about localism, which is the topic from the collaboration between us, our institution. And from this presentation, I hope we can have a same understanding about why this topic is important and relevant for current situation of global fashion industry. So I hope me and Seksarit can have give you a different perspective to enrich the knowledge about how we can approach sustainability in fashion. Okay, I will try to start. Yes. Anyone know about this? What it is? If you know, please give me some reaction. You can type or just say. Yes?
I think this is the UNICEF or like UN.
Yes.
I don't understand what's the...
Yes, okay. So Angela just write typing in the chat that it is BTS at UN. Yes, it's right. If you know this is BTS, it's actually the Korean boy group, and they gave a speech in the UN. And anyone know what did they say? Okay, BTS as brand ambassador of sustainability. Yes. Do you know what it is? What kind of speech? If you see here in the below of the screen, it said SDGs. Anyone heard about SDGs? What it stands for? Have you heard? What is SDGs stand for? Okay, so is it your first time hearing about SDGs, or have anyone have heard about it before? Mental health, okay. And then Sustainability Development Goals. Yes, that's right, Lawrence. So SDGs is actually, thank you, Lawrence. It stands for the Sustainable Development Goals. And it's actually known as global goals that are set of 17 integrated and interrelated goals to end poverty, protect the planet, and ensure that humanity enjoys peace and prosperity by 2030. And the mission statement of these sustainable goals is a blueprint to achieve a better and more sustainable future for all the people and the world by 2030. And the issue of sustainability is considered to be an important issue as there were conferences by intergovernmental countries on a UN resolution at the Conference on Sustainable Development in Rio, Brazil in 2012, sorry. And the conference produced 17 Sustainable Development Goals. It contains 169 targets and it's projected to be completed by 2030. And these agendas are made as one of the guidelines for these countries to formulate public policies or make country programs. And this is 70 goals. This is no poverty, zero hunger, good health and well-being, quality education, gender equality, clean water and sanitation, affordable and clean energy, decent work and economic growth, industry, innovation and infrastructure, reducing inequality, sustainable cities and communities, responsible consumption and production, climate action, life below water, life on land, peace, justice, and strong institutions. And then the last one is partnership for the goals. Okay, so why we should aware about this? Why should us in fashion industry aware about it? Actually, Seksarit have just given us a brief review and a brief about how fashion is one of the most wasteful industry. He also gave us his knowledge about how to make fashion more sustainable using the design approach. So I'm trying to give a different perspective of fashion in sustainability using the localism. So we start from the background. If Seksarit gave the brief from the waste, I maybe try to give from the system, from the linear fashion system. Fashion is one of the big industry. We know that maybe some of you have ever heard about how wasteful fashion industry is. And actually it is the very big industry with value $3 trillion globally. But today's fashion system is linear. The principle is take, make, dispose, which has negative impact on environment and the system. And we can see from the graphic here how fashion has a very long supply chain system. And according to Fletcher, she said that many issues related to sustainability revolve around the scale of production and consumption and the use of resources. The larger and faster the production scale on consumption cycle, the more energy is used. A large amount of non-renewable resources are extracted to produce clothes that are often used for only a short period. After which the materials are largely lost to landfill, or it is estimated that more than half of fashion produced is disposed of in under a year. So this linear system leaves economic opportunities untapped, puts pressure on resources, pollutes, and degrades the natural environment and its ecosystems, and it creates significant negative societal impacts at local, regional, even the global scales. So if this industry continues with this system and continues with this current path by 2050, we as fashion industry, we contribute to we could use more than 26% of the carbon budget. And this is bad actually. And beside the linear system, our one of current driver of the development of fashion industry is the globalization. And the fundamentals of the industry is a market driven by fast changing wealthy country, demand for low cost products, manufactured in the developing world. Yeah, if we realize that mostly garments are often designed in one country, it manufactured in another country and sold worldwide. And the pace is keep increasing. We then have the fast fashion concept, and also the manufacturers keep on want to achieve the supply-demand balance in a very shortest and cheapest way. And so that the most of the clothes that are today designed, manufactured, transported, purchased, used, and ultimately disposed in the world are clothes that are made and sold cheaply so that people can buy new clothes often. Yes, this is very economic, this is very practical, but this is the reality that we have to face, that it comes with consequences. The facts about linear fashion system and the globalization that maximize consumption also lead to another problem, such as an environmental problem about how, if I just said about how manufacturers try to achieve the supply-demand balance by the shortest and cheapest ways. So they want the very low-cost product, and also because of the bigger scale of manufacturing, it's also resulting overproduction. So the waste from the very long supply chain, waste from the overproduction and unsold product, until the waste from the after-use product. This is, yeah, we can count it. This is because of this very long supply chain system. And not only a problem for environment, it is also a problem for economy. And it's stated by Alan MacArthur that globally, customers miss out on 460 billion US dollar of value each year by throwing away clothes that they could continue to wear. And that's just from the after-use product. We need to count the loss from the unsold product, from the waste, from non-effective production process. And also the environmental problem, not only from the waste from the production process and consumption, but even the transportation and distribution process. As I say about how the clothes are designed, manufactured, and sold in different countries, it takes carbon emission from transportation and distribution process. And yeah, if we talk about sustainability, we always talk about the 3 pillars of sustainability, which is people, planet, and profit. We already talked a lot about the planet, the environmental issue, and also about the profit, about the economic impact, and how we miss out some of the amount of money. But also we talk about the people. The current system and globalization, which leads a lot of low-cost production, also lead to another problem, such as a labor issue. So I would like to share a video about this issue so I hope that we can reflect to ourselves. Okay, everyone can see the video.
There's no question the contribution of garment industry in Bangladesh in the economy, but it needs more good rules and regulation. I see the brand names all the time. The tags remind me the tags I have seen in Rana Plaza collapse. people don't want to pay more. So if you don't want to pay more, how the producer would pay more to the worker? So it's like the chain, you know, start from the consumer and ends the labor, you know. Still, a lot of people are missing. They didn't find their bodies. Somebody lost 2 daughters, 2 sons, husband, wife, both. Who will take their responsibility?
So yeah, that's the question. If consumer don't want to pay more, then how the producer able to pay more to the workers? So it's actually a very complex and systemic problem, but on the other hand, the accident actually raises more awareness about the sustainability in fashion industry. Fashion, people started to raise the fashion revolution movement, and people started to questioning who made my clothes. People also try to ask the company about their transparency in the fashion value chain. Even though the term of fashion sustainability already introduced before the accident. And Kate Fletcher is one of the researcher about sustainability in fashion and textile. She introduced the slow fashion term. If Seksarit already introduced but some of the term in sustainability, maybe I would just try to introduce the concept of slow fashion, which is adapted from slow food concept. It is, yeah, you're right. This is food and fashion, because food and fashion is a fundamental part of everyday life. They both graze the body, how food is contact with the lips, the tongue, the stomach, and clothes with the skin, eyes, ears, and affecting physical movement and posture. So fashion and food both provide opportunities for intimacy, pleasure, and satisfaction. We are very common with how food are resources and produced locally. Some of you maybe love fast food, but some of you love fresh food more. We love homemade food. And how every country have their own characteristic of food. And Fletcher also thinking, what if the principle is applied to fashion? And from the concept, slow fashion is born, adapted from slow food, which is related to responsibility and awareness about the whole process of fashion value chain, from design, production, to when the product is consumed. And also the business of fashion and McKinsey company conduct a research, and it stated that sustainability is one of main innovation that conducted by fashion industry in 2018. And by then, sustainability evolved from CSR into policy. So before 2018, we know that some of the fashion company already tried to raising up about the sustainability, but there's also so many critics about the greenwashing strategy, if you have ever heard about it. How they talk and they say that they use the sustainability principle, but not really implement it actually. And right now, the government and fashion company leaders in the process of adapting circular economy principles. So it applied in the company's value chain system, as well as being part of the planning system. If you ever heard about Nike with Nike Purpose, or H&M, Seksarit also already mentioned it. They have a H&M strategy for circular economy. So we need to aware about this. We need to prepare as the new generation. You will you will come into the fashion industry. So we know how we can contribute to this change in the fashion industry. And it is also stated that 66% of global millennials are willing to pay more for fashion company that apply sustainability principles. And of course, the COVID-19 and the quarantine. If we know that this pandemic give us a lot of headache, it's give us a lot of crisis, give us a lot of problem. But if we see everything as good, we have a lot of opportunity. COVID-19 is one thing that I think that push all the chains faster, and various restrictions on mobility have caused economic crisis in various fields, including fashion. We have limitation to do export and import. It makes us rely more on local resources. So right now, sustainability is not a choice. The crisis is the filter to see if we're able to survive the radical change. And it's also because of this, if we see this as an opportunity, we can see what local value and what our local resources can offer. And if there's things that our local resources is still need to improve, we still have time to start. And one of the economic impact of this pandemic is the rise of peer-to-peer social commerce. This is only one impact, who are focused on supporting community members and driving the new circular economy. And this is what WGSN called hyperlocalized social. And in Indonesia, if my student here remember, when the first coronavirus break, that there were various movements in the social media in this pandemic, such as a hashtag support local, buy from local. And WGSN said that although the long-term impact is still unknown, but the shifting behavior, especially the shopping behavior, will remain strong for the future. And there is also rising trend. This is actually from, we know that WGSN is a well-known fashion trend forecasting company. And it is also stated that there's one topic, one trend, the emerging trend, the leverage the local. It is the emergence of global micro communities, and it's creating new era of the relevance for local products. And also this one, this is very fresh from the oven, a news from LVMH. They currently open recruitment for a quite big amount. This is about, I think, about 30,000 maybe of Gen Z under 13 years old. So they want to recruit from around the world and more diverse background. We don't know what's the real purpose of this major hiring spree, but it is a big matter, I think. And we know something's changing, and it's quite radical. Actually, I'm really excited about it. I'm really excited about what's the future of the fashion industry will bring to us. So if we back to the localism is believed to be able to provide new perspective and practical solution to the environmental or social problem. So I try to break down it to the five aspects. And if we talk about sustainability, it should be able to tap on the three pillars: the people, the planet, and the profit. So if we narrowing the scales, like what I just introduced about how globalization, negative impact of the globalization. If we try to narrowing the scales, resourcing from the local, it is already one of the effort to reduce the carbon emission of transportation and distribution process. It is also easier to control because the fashion value chain is within the coverage area. Also about the people and the environment, it is for engagement because they can directly feel the impact of the action. For example, if they know the good process of fashion production lead to a better environment, they have a better water, they can directly feel the impact. And also if the use of resources is fair and the circulation of local economy is going well, it is lead to the economic resilience. Like, we never know what the future brings, such as what we had never imagined, how the pandemic bring the radical change in the global trade and the people behavior, how we restricted for going anywhere, we suddenly in quarantine, and some of the country or some of the area haven't really ready about this. And so I think the localism is one of the of the effort for this problem, and also about diversity from the globalization of our current fashion system. Because of the large scale of manufacturing, they produce almost all the same stuff. If we see like what we see in our department store, in our mall, but how all of the different brand produce all the similar stuff. And localism in fashion, such as in food, will open the opportunity to more visual diversity about local wisdom, local stories, heritage, etc. And it based on ecological condition, the needs of the wearer, and it also leads to the engagement from the local heritage. We also have traditional techniques that mostly in line with the slow fashion principle. But because of the complex production process and craftsmanship, some of them are maybe more pricey than what the global brands can offer. That's because of that the fast fashion is more relevant for the economy. But in sustainability, we also have the buy less but better agenda. And it is also an effort to make consumer more aware and engaged to their clothes and fashion. Also the development of local communities about redefining relationship between clothes and fashion. And maybe Lisa can share much more better than me about it. So yes, this is maybe my last quote. This is from Fajar again. Localism is a solution to unsustainability. Local communities and smaller communities, of course, can see and feel firsthand the impact that occurs on the action taken by each other and the environment. So yes, that's bring us to an end. I really hope that this joint project can give us fresh and diverse ideas from the students, more interesting stories, and at least we can contribute to support sustainability in fashion industry, even just in a very, maybe small contribution, but this is a start and the contribution towards the achievement of sustainable development goals. Okay, I'm done speaking. I'm giving my floor back to the MC. Thank you all for your attention.
Thank you so much, Ms. Rahayu, for your sharing to us about localism. And I would like to remind for all the participants, you can drop your question to the chat box here, and we will have the Q&A session later after Ms. Lisa, of course. So next, I will move on to Ms. Lisa. Okay, Ms. Lisa here is a founder of Studio EPB, Brooklyn, New York, and also he's a guest artist and instructor, School of Fashion, Parsons School of Design. She has also had so many exhibition projects, such as ITPA Retramp Project Berlin, Germany at 2021. And then she had also Desire Lines Assembly Room, New York at 2020. She has so many experience, and I couldn't read all to you. It'd be too long, take too long. But I'm moving forward to her educational experience. She's currently a candidate for MA in Custom Studies at New York University, Steinhardt School of Culture, Education and Human Development, New York. And also she's artist in resident of Babaran Gunung Culture House, Yogyakarta, Indonesia in 2019. Okay, Ms. Lisa is about to share about redesigning our relationship to fashion and clothing. Please welcome Ms. Lisa. The time is yours.
Thank you so much. I'm going to share my screen here and go into slideshow. Can everybody see my name and Studio EPB here on the screen?
Very clear, Lisa. Yes,
great,
can see
wonderful. Thank you. Well, thank you everyone for having me here. It was so informative to hear both presentations, and I'm excited to share and continue to learn. And I hope there's some good questions in the question and answer period, because I'm so curious what everybody's been thinking about in relation to the state of affairs in fashion and fine art and design in the 21st century, not quite post-pandemic, but maybe in the latter half, let's hope. So my name is Elizaveta Bozetsky. I go by Lisa, and I have a studio here in Brooklyn, New York, in Bushwick. And I make sculptures, paintings, and installation work out of textiles, often using remnants of clothing or materials used to make clothing. The first piece that I would like to talk about is this dress that you see on the screen here, and it's actually the dress that I'm wearing. And this dress was made by my mother in the Soviet Union in the late 70s. That's where I was born. I was born in Moscow, Russia. And in 1987, my family, my two parents, my brother, and myself fled as refugees from the Soviet Union right at the height of the Afghani-Russian conflict and came to the United States. And so we immigrated to the US and I grew up here. And this dress wasn't only a dress that she made and wore, it was actually the dress that she wore on our journey from Russia to the United States. And I don't normally wear the dress because it's quite fragile at this point. Normally it hangs in my studio, but I wore it tonight for the special occasion, thinking about kind of this topic of redesigning our relationship to clothing. And what I learned as I started to learn more about textile surface design and history is that some of these patterns on this dress actually are some surface design, maybe some of them influenced by Japanese history. There's some botte in there and maybe even some batik. And so this dress is a piece of clothing that remains really important to me and has allowed me to think a lot about the kind of totemic quality of the clothes we wear, not just as something that we put on to protect ourselves from the elements, but as something that actually carries ancestry and lineage and meaning, and the importance of protecting and archiving those things. So a lot of the work that I do is installation based, which means that I use textiles to fill a room and create environments. And this particular project called Stamina back from 2017 was made using clothesline. So the clothesline that is hung up to traditionally dry clothes when they were washed, pre-industrial washing machines, and are often still done in many parts of the world. And the way that I found this clothesline was first from a little store in my neighborhood in Brooklyn, and then later I found the supplier who actually brought this over from China, and then I found the warehouse in China. And so I kind of started from my local neighborhood and then slowly started to learn about the supply chain of how this material came from overseas to the United States, and was introduced to a lot of people along the way, really educating me about the way that a material travels. And you know, ultimately, I would be interested in taking that a step further and finding out where this was manufactured, the textiles and threads and fibers that were made to use it, and really expanding the story from like my local relationship to this material to the actual global implication of this kind of material, and thinking also about clothesline used to dry clothing, that clothing is not only using textiles to create itself, but also all the labor that it takes in order to maintain and to clean it. These are a couple of works that are more like paintings. The one on the far right is a piece that I made with another garment that was owned by my mother. It was a suit that she actually bought secondhand. I'm a very adamant proponent of vintage and secondhand shopping, which I know is also an important part of the sustainable fashion movement. And so this was an article of clothing that she had and wore, and then later was passed on to me, and I transformed it from a garment into a painting. So I was able to preserve it in another iteration rather than a wearable. It then became a work of art. And the piece on the left is a similar investigation working with the material of latex. Latex, of course, has a really interesting material history because naturally latex comes from the rubber tree. and has since developed into an entirely synthetic material. And so it's not fiber-based, it's a synthetic material. And I'm very curious about the use of new materials, synthetic materials, and their implications, both environmental and social, and how, you know, how those materials will continue to evolve as previous textiles and fibers become less available, such as cotton. So as was mentioned, I had the pleasure of doing a very short, unfortunately too short, residency in Yogyakarta in 2019, and learning a little bit about the practice of the batik. And I really didn't know anything about this until I showed up. And the thing that really resonated with me as I was learning to do this incredibly specific, difficult, sacred craft practice was how important environment was to creating this work, and how it wasn't just about the technique, the material, and the history, but it was really about the environment, specifically the natural environment that allowed for this kind of work to be created. And I was fortunate enough to visit some museums and learn about the history of the batik and make some work like the one you see on the left. And what I realized as soon as I came back to the United States is that it was completely impossible to replicate making the work that I did when I was in Yogyakarta, in a city, in New York City, or anywhere else outside of that space. So it really created a strong understanding of localism and what I call site specificity. And so the term site specific refers to a work of art that's designed specifically for a particular location, and it has an interrelationship with that location. So it's something that really can only be created in a context and seen in a context. And as soon as you change that context, it begins to have a different kind of meaning. So all of this has me thinking a lot about identity, and how clothing and materials, just like people, have identities that are a result of biography, of place of origin, transmission, handling, and imprinting. And wearing clothing, just like making site-specific artwork, is what's called a situated practice, meaning that it has different meaning according to different circumstances. So wearing one thing in one set of circumstances doesn't have the same meaning if you wear that exact same thing in a different set of circumstances. And environmental circumstances contribute to identity, and that none of it really should be assumed. I think the role of local environment is more challenging today given the presence of digital connectivity, because having relationships to one's place isn't as direct when we're inundated by all of these other places through the internet, and we have to learn how to move through that information and still retain a relationship to one's place. And I question a lot about how we resolve questions about question of identity with the speed of information. And I have concluded that it's very important to maintain critical thinking and looking and analyzing what we see and having objective analysis and evaluation of the issue in order to form a judgment. So on the left here is a practice I do just to get my mind around things. I'm a visual thinker, and I process things through visuals, and I do a lot of collaging in order to understand where I am. And the kinds of questions around biography that I think are so important to ask prior to approaching any kind of creative process, whether it's design, whether it's fine art, whether it's writing something, is about one's biography. Where was I born? What influenced me growing up? what are the colors and textures and smells and tastes and sounds of my home. I loved how Ms. Ayu mentioned the relationship between slow food and slow fashion, both being sensorial experiences. And I think there is an incredible parallel between the two. The things that we bring into our bodies and the things that we wear on our bodies are very much sensorial experiences. So to slow down and ask those questions of how we understand and how we experience those things will really inform a lot of the way that we see and the way that we produce. What kind of music did I listen to? But after I left Seattle, Moscow, Russia, I moved to Seattle, Washington, and I grew up in the grunge music scene of the 1990s, and that was really influential to me in fashion and in kind of my understanding of the world. And now I see a lot of that trend returning. And so to understand where fashion trends originally emerged from, what kind of influences were there at the origin, what was the culture that informed those, I think allow for a much more critical and a much more informed approach to consuming and to producing and to respecting the heritage and origins of where these visuals come from. That includes what kind of media do we consume, what kinds of foods that we eat, how do you spend your time, what makes you happy, what makes me sad. These questions of just looking at one's own life and understanding that what perhaps seems very obvious and maybe a given to each individual person is actually distinct, because we all come from different places. We all have different biographies, and all of those elements of biography inform how we see the world. And we're in a time where we can really share those things from a place of respect and care, and prevent this term, which I'm sure you've heard of, cultural appropriation and misappropriation, if we're willing to speak about our own stories as lived experiences and our own biographies. What I find really interesting, having just completed my first year in the costume studies department at NYU, is that most of, at least Western American education about fashion and most of the sort of aspirational, particularly luxury branding of fashion really pulls from Western Europe in the 18th and 19th centuries, kind of post-industrial revolution, but maybe as early as like the 16th, 17th century, and the court of Versailles, and this concept of Francophilia, where France really was the apex of the fashion world and haute couture, and the center of influence, even if the derivative fast fashion lines don't necessarily, they're not necessarily at the same standard. They're seeing the aspiration coming from places like France and places like England. And I really question this Eurocentric approach, because it's very clear that the history of fashion as informed by trade and colonization expands much beyond the Western canon. And yet we see Moschino 2021 pulling from the court of Marie Antoinette, and this kind of continues to be an aspirational aesthetic. And so another similar example is the three-piece suit, which was pulled from the court of Charles II. And it is so commonplace now that it's just assumed that this Western form of wear is a given. In fact, it isn't, but I think it's important now in a global context to really question these standards and why it is that they continue to be aspirational, and do they continue to be aspirational, this Francophilia and Anglomania. And this is just a chart of, you know, things I'm sure many of you are familiar with, the network of luxury branding and how conglomerated they are, and how they really come from one place. And one source of power, one or several corporations, and how intertwined they are in proliferating their particular aesthetic. You know, it's whether one is cynical or curious, I think it's interesting to see the relationship between all of these different entities. So the last kind of element I want to talk about is, as this concept relates to preventing further cultural appropriation, is this concept of the TCE. So TCE is a traditional cultural expression. TCEs are creative products of Indigenous communities. And for Indigenous peoples, TCEs are a reflection of that community's cultural heritage and social identity. And in addition, they can hold spiritual meaning, religious significance, or links to political notions such as self-determination. Excuse me. So I'm just going to offer 3 examples of TCEs that have been present in the media in the last several years, and how different indigenous communities are confronting and grappling with larger companies like the ones that I showed previously, large luxury companies, to really lay claim to their tangible and intangible cultural heritage, and ensure that they are also profiting and participating in the use of their designs and ideas. So the first image here is from an Inuit people. In 1915, Salome Awa, a woman of Inuit descent, accused the company KTZ of appropriating a sacred Inuit design. And to substantiate her allegations of the brand, the TCEs featured on the Inuit inspired garment as Inuit property. So she did a tremendous amount of research and was able to reference a lot of writing and books that basically proved that this was a design that was part of her heritage. And her efforts sparked consumer backlash that led KTZ to remove the Inuit inspired garments from the sale online and in stores. This is a similar situation. This time, this was for the 2015 collection of Isabel Marant, integrating embroidery elements into her collection on the left that were stylistically identical to those that the Mihe, I'm probably mispronouncing that, my apologies, people apply in their traditional designs. And since Marant did not ask the people for the permission to use their TCE, compensate them, or acknowledge the community as a source of inspiration, she was accused of appropriating the Mihe culture. And then this final one is back to Ella Louis Vuitton, LVMH. These are from the 2012 collection of patterns that were used, and these are Maasai patterns from Kenya. The Maasai have a pastoral life and are well known and respected all over the world. And for many decades, the Maasai people lost access to water and land, impoverishing those living that pastoral life. And there are over 1,000 corporations that have used Maasai imagery and culture to promote their products, because associating with the Maasai increases sales. In 2009, a group of elders and leaders decided to build unity among the Maasai to take power over the cultural brand, and developed something called the Maasai IP Initiative Trust. That's the Maasai wearing Maasai after the LVMH. So the creation of the Maasai cultural brand and, the Maasai IP Initiative Trust really poses the question and a call to action around launching new enterprises that use these TCEs. And whether they have IP rights or not, Indigenous communities can market themselves as undisputed owners of these TCEs. If they're able to do so effectively, They will be able to influence the consumer perception and market value of fashion products. The more sway they have in the final market countries, the easier it can be for them to earn and credit the recognition they deserve for their contributions to culturally inspired product. And even though TCE holders do not necessarily need IP rights to develop compelling marketing collateral, branding efforts that exploit IP assets are especially effective. And this makes me think of Ms. Ayu's point, how 60% of younger consumers are really questioning the ethical consideration of the companies that they purchased from. And I think that it's not only the environmental implications, but also how are these companies actually utilizing and crediting the patterns, especially sacred patterns and these specific cultural aspects. How are they crediting them? How are they relating to them? And how are they allowing for them to profit from them if they decide that that is the right choice for them? I have some questions in the end that I would love to open for the question and answer period around. What are your influences, aspirations? What does luxury mean and whether it's still important? And I just want to conclude by saying that in order to redesign a relationship to fashion and clothing, we first have to understand our relationship to ourselves, that our identities, desires, aspirations, needs, dreams, and ambitions are an important part of us. And so is the understanding of our capabilities, resources, and role within our communities. We no longer live in a time where we can assume that we will inherit these things from our lineage, and yet we cannot deny that ancestry is an important part of who we are. So we must begin by investigating our influences and not taking anything for granted or at face value. And only by critically assessing what we see, can we begin to determine new relationships for what we produce and what we wear. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Lisa, for the inspiring sharing. Oh, and you already summarized for me. Thank you. Before we move into Q&A session, I would like to give some brief summary from each speaker. From Sexorit, we learned that we had to think more about sustainable design. Sustainable design can be made from substitute for the better material, and then using the zero waste technique, and also exploring the possibilities for the pattern. And then you can design for customization and also design for closed loop system. And then you have to think about material design and technology, and you can combine that to make a good design. And then for our second lecture this morning, we had Ms. Ayu. And Ms. Ayu said about the localism. And then I would like to summarize a little bit. And Ms. Ayu shared about we need to think more about the local product, and then they have a local resourcing, smaller economic resilience, diversity, social engagement, and also we have small scales. This is the solution for the sustainability, and also it will increase our economic resilience. And then we had our third speaker, Ms. Lisa, who also reminded us that we here learn about site specific, that refers to work of art designed specifically for a particular location and has interrelationship with the location. So we need to identify ourselves too, who we are, what we are, and then the concept of TCE as well, the concept that we can create creative product from indigenous community. So after this, we have a Q&A session. I think there are a lot of people who want to give question. First, I would like to, okay, we have Mrs. Janet here, Mrs. Janet Theowarang here. He's our fellow lecturer who want to give question. Please, Miss Janet.
Okay, thank you, Miss Olive. Maybe I would like to ask to Mr. Seksari, regarding about the sustainable fashion. A few days ago, I was giving some lecturer as a guest lecturer at the UTS, University Technology of Sydney. And then one of the participants asked me whether, do you have any certification for sustainable fashion as a fashion designer? Well, I told them that I still knew, but then I tried to take a look at the websites, but I cannot find the certification for sustainable practice as a designer. Mostly it's for the textiles or maybe for the garment company, for the sustainable certification, maybe more to the green or the materials that they use, such as cotton and so on. Maybe you have something to recommend, Mr. Seksari? Probably that's my question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the question. According to the certification for designers, I haven't really seen that yet. And like you said, I have only seen certification for materials and textile. So the only way to promote the brand as a sustainable fashion brand, I think it depends on how you inform your customers or how you market the brand, that you actually commit to the sustainable approach in your design.
Okay, thank you for the explanation and the recommendation, Mr. Seksari.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Janet. Okay, and I would like to move into another. Oh, now we have students. There is Tarisha Ekaputri. Tarisha, you want to ask by yourself?
Yes, thank you. I want to ask about us as a fashion designer. How do we keep up with big names such as Zara and H&M to support localism? Thank you.
Okay. Maybe I try to give an answer for Tarisa. Thank you so much for the question, Tarisa. Actually, if in sustainability, I think there's no single approach if we want to talk about sustainability, because as what we just shared about how Mr. Seksari just shared, about how Lisa just shared, that it is very complex. And if we want to say about environment, we also have to make sure that the economy is going well, so it will affect the people. So some of fast fashion, such as H&M, like what I just said, it's already changed their system. Maybe I will share a little bit. Yes, right now they have their approach in sustainability into circularity. Maybe Mr. Seksarit already also shared about the closed loop system in design. So they start their strategy to sustainability with circular economy, circular system. So if you want to see about this more, you can take a look about this technology. But I think it's maybe instead of thinking about how we keep up with the big name and the big capital they already run in a very long time, what if we just concern about our way to approach? And since the trend is here, and some studies also say that the consumers start to aware about this issue, we can see Lisa already give us example about how Louis Vuitton with Masai, and also if you aware some time ago, the Dior also do it with ikat, traditional ikat from around the world. So maybe rather than think to keep up, maybe we can learn from them some of the principle that we can use. Yeah, so we have a lot of approach actually to contribute in sustainability, and it is impossible to do the single approach. So at least we can tap the three principle to the people, planet, and the profit. That's for Tarisa, maybe. Is it answering your question?
Yes, Miss. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Maybe Lisa or Seksarit want to.
Yeah, Lisa or Seksarit want to give some answer as well.
Oh, okay. To compete with the big brand like Zara and H&M, I think it's not really the case. I mean, if you're going to focus on localism, then I think it's completely different market. So I think you can run the business locally and target a different group of people, unlike those. So the customer will be different from those big brand like Zara and H&M. And I think that when you run the business locally, the customer around the area would prefer something local than the fast fashion one from the Zara and H&M. Okay.
Thank you, Sek. Lisa, you want to add as well?
Well, my answer would be to not compete or keep up with. I mean, my answer is to really, because those companies will eventually seek out the local trends, the local cultures. They're the ones that should be keeping up with you. And so I would say protect what you're doing and ensure that what you're doing is protected, so that when those companies inevitably find that, you have a lot more leverage to negotiate your designs. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Lisa. Risha, is that okay? Okay. Next, we will move on. Oh, we have Angeline Kianina here. Angeline, you want to ask by yourself, or you want me to read it?
Okay, Miss. Thank you for all the presentations, which are all very interesting. Okay, so my first question is for Miss Ayu and Mr. Sengsarit. As a consumer, what can we do to shift the capitalist-based fashion industry into sustainability-based fashion industry? Well, so that was my first question. Can I ask 2 questions, please? Or maybe there's a time limitation?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And my second question is for Miss Lisa. So I would like to know what variables are considered as cultural appropriation, and what are the limitations that we should know as a designer? Thank you.
Okay, maybe for the first question, I would like to answer. Angeline, for the consumer, you can, maybe if you want to raise the more awareness about this issue, you can join some communities, because there's also some approach in the sustainability is from the community. So the communities try to raising awareness. Like, I think in Indonesia, we have a zero waste communities for fashion. They try to spread more awareness about sustainability in fashion. And I think that's also come from consumer perspective, because they non-profit agenda, they also want to share about their awareness in sustainability. I think that's what I can suggest for you. Maybe Mr. Seksarit want to add more.
What was your question again? Sorry. It's like how you can actually support localism in this kind of capitalism economy or something.
Okay, so my question was, as a consumer, what can we do to shift the capitalism-based fashion industry into more sustainability-based industry?
So to shift from consumerism, I think from what I have seen from many designers, they encourage people to buy less. And also as a designer, you can create something that could be worn timelessly, and a timeless design would also encourage people to buy less. And then it will reduce the consumption, and that somehow would help to shift from capitalism to sustainability.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay,
I can speak to the question regarding the what are the variables of cultural appropriation. I think what it really comes down to is two concepts. One is communication and the other is consent. We live in a world where we have so much information available at our fingertips, and yet it's very shallow. And I know that for me, being an academic institution, we're responsible for doing a lot of bibliography and a lot of really in-depth research to ensure that the sources of our information are actually valid academic sources. That may not always be possible, but I think there has to be rigorous research about anything that you're touching, that you're exploring, and to communicate as best as possible with other people that might have expertise in that field. And if it's determined that they have done something, there is this idea of consent and asking and inquiring whether that something is allowed to be used. Now, that's a negotiation that happens between people, and there isn't really like a right or wrong answer, but the investigation, the inquiry, and the research are really important parts to determining whether something is appropriative or appreciative.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Angel. And then we have someone who raised hand. There is a Dian Putri, you want to ask?
Okay, I'm going to ask my question. Hello, I'm V from I am V, one of textile, craft, and fashion Telkom University student. In terms of sustainability and the existence of trend, I think that trend was the one of so much thing that influence garment and another production that trigger people to be an active consumer, and it is against sustainability. So I would like to know your opinion about, can sustainability reduce the fluctuation of rising trend? Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for your question, Dian. Maybe I will try to answer the question. As what I just said before, that it is very complex. The fashion industry is very complex, and sustainability. If we want to talk about sustainability, we have to tap the three pillars, and of course, to change it radically, to change how the system that already going and run in a very long time, it takes a lot of effort, not only from us as a designer, or not only from the brands, not only from the company, but also from the, if we know about the pentahelix, it needs government effort, it needs media effort, and it needs the consumer effort. Also, it needs the academic effort. So something like this is actually our effort to contribute to make a better fashion system, to raising awareness about what happened in fashion industry and what we should do about sustainability. But yeah, we need a system. Actually, we need a system. And I some days ago, I also joining a conference. It's about the policy making with a World Trade Organization, and currently. I'm also sharing about how currently some of the company, government, and the academic in developed country have tried to make it as a policy. That's why the sustainability it's evolved from just CSR into a policy. So they're just, because of this pandemic, actually it's like the catalyst to push them to make it happen in a very short term. Some of the policy already there. Actually, I saw some of them, like what in RAP. Maybe if you want to see more, some of the developed country like in UK and some of in a European country have already tried to make it in policy. So I think the most effective thing is the integrated collaboration between the pentahelix, and then to make it as a policy. So it requires more contribution and collaboration from a lot of components because it's a very complex system. Maybe, I hope that's answered the question. Yeah, Lisa, maybe want to
Lisa or
Seksarit? Yeah.
I'll pass on this one.
Okay.
Okay. Maybe
Okay, Dian,
last.
You still want to ask, or is that enough for you?
No, thank you for all of the information. Thank you.
Thank you, Dian.
Maybe
we have one last question, Miss Olive, before we close this session.
Oh, no, it's time? Okay.
Yeah, it's time.
Okay.
Left there in New York. Sorry, Lisa, for keeping you.
Oh, yeah, I'm so sorry, Lisa. We still have, several questions actually. Next, we move to Lawrence. Lawrence, are you there? You want to ask by yourself?
Yes. Thank you for the time. Can you hear me? Okay. So to Ms. Ista, I would like to ask about a quiet line to avoid copyright of intellectual property. Considering patients are very often to referencing each other, and as long as I know, copyright infringement in fashion industry is quite tricky. Thank you.
I can speak to this.
Okay.
I know that in fashion it is quite tricky, and I know there are certain principles around, you know, if the design is shifted a certain amount and no longer is, you know, if it's 3 steps away from the original, it's no longer copyright infringement. I'm not currently sure the status of that. Maybe that's shifted with some of these conversations about different, cultural IP, but I don't know if it can necessarily be avoided. I think that similarly to what I said earlier, the intense, rigorous research, which is so available through the use of internet and other sources, just to get a sense of what other people have done and whether or not there is protections on that information, and to do that in advance. And alternatively, to be willing to negotiate the repercussions if some of that infringement does take place, because I think at a certain point it's going to be inevitable, and it's not whether the conflict happens, but how that conflict is resolved once it does take place.
Okay, Lawrence. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Lisa, for answering. Oh, actually, we only have one question. You want to continue, or only one left? Okay.
2 left. Maybe Miss Supriya also want to ask.
Oh, okay.
Mari Josie and then Miss Supriya.
Okay. Okay, Josie. Can you?
Yay. Thank you. Hello, my name is Josie, and I wanted to ask my wonderful 3 speakers. I want to ask about how to do a better research about a culture, since at this moment, informations are getting mingled and unconvincing. And actually, as a Gen Z, we actually read less, and you know, it's bad, right? So I want to ask some tips about this. Thank you.
Who want to speak first about this? Maybe my suggestion also just do more read, do more read and observing travel maybe, and watch more. I already talked to the students that if in fashion you have to be more aware about a lot of social cultural issue besides just watching about what happened in the fashion industry, but you also have to see what happened in the environment, because it's really impact to our industry. So read more and observe more, see more, and also watch more things. That's from me speaking.
Maybe Zach or Lisa, you want to add some suggestion?
I want to introduce the concept of slow research. We have slow food and slow fashion, and now I'd like to introduce the concept of slow research, because I think it is really, it is a more difficult task to pursue resources that are not just hyperlinks or mentioned in an Instagram feed, or just kind of flying by with all the rapid information, and to actually imagine that there's a depth and that you have to go deeper and deeper into the whole and see who is the person who is saying it, what are their what are their actual credentials, potentially get in touch with that person, have a communication. And what ends up happening is, instead of having 100 different sources, you might end up with 10 sources, but you get very intimately knowledgeable with those sources, and they're more trustworthy. I would also really suggest, to echo Ms. Ayu's point about observing more, interviewing and speaking with people, and really having one-on-one conversations about direct experience, to document what is happening in this current moment, and to not assume that that is what is happening for everyone, but that is a subjective narrative, and to contextualize what you're saying as such, because there's a big difference between saying that this is how something is versus this is one particular story. And I think that's going to give a lot more validity to the research that you do.
Thank you, Lisa. Zach, you want to add as well?
Well, what I want to add is I agree with both Lisa and Ayu that, when you do the research about the culture, I mean, you have to read and you have to, but I think the best way to really research the culture is really to experience by yourself and to go to the place. It's not only visually researched through Instagram or internet, but to go to the place and to experience by yourself would be the best way to research the culture.
Okay, thank you. Josie?
Yeah, it's really good and more than enough. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Josie. Okay, now last we have, Mrs. Sophia. Are you still there? Okay.
Yes.
Please.
Yes, I'm interested in slow fashion, and I just want you to give more ideas, something like that, for us.
Mrs. Sophia, I want to ask Lisa.
Yes,
right?
yes, Lisa, please. Okay. Sorry.
Well, we don't have a lot of time. I think, I was mentioning earlier that I'm really a big proponent of vintage and secondhand things and things that belong to other people, and like going into your closet or your family's closet and starting to look at the things that are there, and like spending time with those things, and like developing intimate relationships with the things that you own as a way of slowing down that instinct to consume and accumulate more. That's one approach that I think is sorely missing from many of us today.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Ms. Pia, for your question. Okay, now the Q&A session is closed. Thank you so much for your participation. And before we close, can you please all to open your camera, because we want to take a picture. Can someone to help me to capture the picture?
Enrico still there?
Yes. Jojo, are you still there?
Okay, I will help.
Okay. With a smile. Okay.
We have 4 slides here.
Yeah.
Second slide. third slide. And then the fourth slide. Okay, all done.
Okay, all done. Thank you, Ms. Ayu.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. So many inspiring stories. Thank you for sharing with us. Thank you, Seksari. Thank you, Ms. Ayu. And thank you, of course, Lisa. It's almost bedtime there for Lisa, but she's putting up with us. Okay, so thank you so much for coming. And for all of you, thank you for joining this session. I hope we will have another time to another joining session. And I hope you can also put your presence. I think the link is on the chat box as well. Okay,
yeah,
thank you.
And maybe I will give information from my students. You can have a rest a little bit. We can join again at 11. Okay. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much, Seksarit, Ms. Supriya, and Lisa. Thank you very much for giving a lot of inspiration to my students. And I hope our joint collaboration will result in a lot of great stories.
Thank you so much, Ms. Supriya, for joining as well.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Thank you,
Thank you,
Lisa. Thank you, Ayu. And thank you, everybody, for joining.
Thank you, Lisa. Are you sleeping now?
Sorry, because of the time zone. You're still muting. You're still muting.
You're still on the mute. You're still muted.
Okay, Lisa is already left. Okay, thank you, Sophia.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you
for joining.
See you again in another opportunity. Okay.
I may leave.
Yes, you can. Thank you, Ms. Supriya.
So
I hope
much,
we can. I hope we can meet in person. I really miss Bangkok and.
Yeah, we want to go to Bangkok.
Please come.
How the condition there?
Oh, quite serious now.
Oh, okay.
Oh, have you been vaccinated?
We may have to meet each other about two years more. I'm not sure about that.
Yeah. In Indonesia, everyone has already in their.
I think it's better, and now it's better condition, I guess.
I see everyone is already putting off their mask. Bad, but yeah. I really miss MBK and the food corner.
I really miss Thai food.
It's a pity that, right?
Yeah.
Thank
you very much for coming.
Yes.
We can talk again later about the project after this.
Actually, it's very enthusiastic to do of this seminar. He's very good lecturer we have.
Yes, he is. Yes, he is.
He's exaggerating.
Cesar will gain more fans here in Indonesia.
He actually, I don't know, he always say yes, but what we will do is very welcoming. And I also remember that the first time it's just we email him. I remember we email him to if we can come there to the Rangsit University, and he's very welcome. And we're also surprised about how welcome your university was, because they prepare like food and then the installation. We remember about that.
Thank you.
Yeah. So that's why I hope that this cooperation can improve more and more.
Yes.
Every year.
I hope so.
Yes.
Yes.
And hopefully we can travel to Surabaya.
Yes.
Surabaya. Yes, please.
Please come.
We are
That's right.
We're waiting because we can
prepare
go
slow food for
and it's also near Denpasar, Bali, and actually we also have a lot of things to do in the neighborhood area. I hope that someday we can welcome all of you in our city. Okay. Thank you so much.
We look forward to.
Yes. Thank you so much, Sophia.
Yes.
Okay, thank you so
very
much for
all.
today.
so much.
Thank you so much for today.
Yes, this
Okay,
is
maybe we
very
can...
good, good speakers we
Thank
have.
you,
Yeah.
Sophia. Thank you very much.
Okay, so thank you, and I'll talk to you later. And so I'm going to take a leave now. Okay.
Yes.
Okay,
Thank
Sexari, thank you very much. We
Goodbye.
also
Thank you.
Thank
you.
you for
Goodbye.
now. Thank you for
Bye-bye.
sharing.
Time.
Bye
Thank you
bye.
for sharing.
Bye bye. Take care.
Take care. Coco udah kembali. Ini recordnya di stop kali ya? Kita stop